Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to oppose this amendment, and I don't oppose the entire amendment. It's the section that removes line 17 through 99. The underlying bill is a good bill about access to contraceptives, and I support it. But I've been told that the governor will veto House Bill 1138 if my corn masa folic acid bill is attached to it. I have no idea why the governor does not support my bill, because no one from the governor's office has had the courtesy to speak to me about their concerns. This bill has actually passed 2 committees. It's been thoroughly vetted. We had a hearing on it last year, an hour-long hearing, which honestly was one of the best hearings that I've ever seen at this Capitol, full of experts who could answer all of the committee members' questions. But I do know that the Republican caucus has the votes lined up to support the amendment to kill my bill, which was attached to House Bill 1138 through an amendment added in Health and Human Services Committee. The bill also passed the Ag Committee and Rules, but was not called up on crossover day. So I rise to oppose this amendment, but I really just want you to understand exactly what you are voting down. About 30 years ago, a doctor right here in Atlanta by the name of Dr. Godfrey Oakley of Emory University made an extraordinary connection between folic acid levels in women and neural tube defects, such as spina bifida in developing fetuses, which is a fancy way of saying that low levels of folic acid is associated with the spinal cord developing wrong, which happens very early in pregnancy at about 4 weeks, before most women know that they are pregnant. And almost 30 years ago, we began fortifying wheat products with folic acid, which is a B vitamin. It's hard to get enough of this folic acid through your diet. You literally have to eat 8 cups of kale a day or 2 full cups of beans a day, which I know none of us would do. So with fortification, all women of reproductive age would have higher levels of folic acid. And in case they got pregnant, neural tube defects could be prevented. By the time most women realize they're pregnant and start prenatal vitamins, it's actually too late. Since we began fortifying wheat with folic acid, the rate of spina bifida has decreased by 30%. This is one of the top public health triumphs of the 20th century. However, we haven't seen this drop in populations of people who don't eat much wheat. The rate of spina bifida in Latino populations is over twice as high as any other population. Also, women who are gluten intolerant or who have celiac disease, they also eat more corn than wheat, and they also run the risk of having low folic acid levels. That's why my bill, which you're about to cut, proposes that we fortify corn flour with folic acid. Reactions to this proposal have been amazingly positive. People have said, that makes so much sense. Why didn't we do this in the first place? And who would be against this? The idea for the bill actually came to me from my local Rotary Club. Now, you might be thinking that this could be done voluntarily or it should happen at the national level. You would be right, except that nothing has happened for 10 years, ever since federal regulators allowed but did not require folic acid to be added to corn masa products, despite plenty of advocacy. In fact, the amount of lobbying by Frito-Lay against these bills nationwide tells me that companies will never do this voluntarily. And I have discovered that the climate in Washington right now is not conducive to getting it done there. So let me tell you a little story about the potential impact of this disability. Andrea Lopez and her husband were pregnant with their first child, a boy. Midway through the pregnancy, an ultrasound showed that something was wrong. The baby's brain was malformed, a condition called anencephaly, which is a severe fatal neural tube defect where a baby is born without parts of the brain, skull, and scalp, due to the neural tube failing to close during the first month of pregnancy. There is no cure, with most infants dying within hours or days of birth. For 10 days, Andrea held her son, covering the malformity under a little pink and blue cap. Then little Gabriel left this world. Gabriel would have been Andrea's only son. Now, imagine today that you could pass a bill that prevents anyone from ever having to experience this again. But even better, little Gabriel, he would still be alive. Why wouldn't you do that? Of course, not all infants with neural tube defects die. People with spina bifida have lifelong disabilities, are often wheelchair-bound, and require many expensive surgeries. Lifetime estimates of medical expenses are over $1 million. And you know those comp waivers that we never have enough money to fund each year? Fortifying corn flour will decrease the need for comp waivers. Comp is short for comprehensive, as these waivers are the most expensive, used to cover the cost of helping people with spina bifida and other severe disabilities, helping them live in their communities, often costing over $50,000 per year. That's in additional to medical costs. So over a lifetime, that's approximately $2 million in comp waiver expenses per individual with spina bifida. Currently, there are about 2,000 people born with spina bifida each year in the United States. So that's probably around 50 people who were born with it in Georgia. Now 50, that might sound like a small number, but if you think about 50 people rolling on to the comp waivers every year, and you think they live 35 years between 25 and the average death is 56, you're looking, if I did the math right, and it was late last night, but I calculated $88 million per year. That's a lot of money. And if you drop the percentage of people who are born with spina bifida just 1% per year, I don't trust my math because I was up too late last night, but that also is a lot of money. When I was working on this bill, I happened to be talking about it in the presence of a hospital CEO. At some point, she interrupted the meeting. She held the bill like this, and she said, "This is a no-brainer. This needs to happen because this is uncompensated care that can be prevented." Ultimately, this bill was about healthy babies. It was about protecting life. What a missed opportunity. Consider voting your values and not opposing this amendment. Governor Kemp, he's not up for re-election, but you are. Seriously, think about it. Do you really want to be on record for increasing state expenses, being against preventing disabilities, and being against protecting life? I hope, at the very least, by taking this time to speak to you today, I have helped you make an informed choice before you cast your vote. Mr. President, if there are no questions, I yield the well. Thank you.